break it down in everything I do, never mind materia medica teaching. So how do we do that? Well, this move over the past 20 years, a move towards more student-centered learning, very, very good. I mean, when I was studying, it was like you had stories from people, and you sat in a lecture hall. Now it's a little bit more. There's a bit more participation in it, although it's gone. I don't know if you've been materia medica teachers who had those where you have to goddamn take an oyster shell and put it on a table. Is that still going on? You put it on a table and say to the students, right, what do you make of that, lads? Lasses? I want you to meditate on that. You've got 10 minutes, tell me what you come up with. You know. It's strange. I look at that and I feel a strange craving for hard-boiled eggs. You know. Marvellous, isn't it? So, you know. We could do an experiment, a file of gonorrhea, you know. Yes. I suddenly want to have a poo and lean backwards. You know. Here's a Bushmaster steak, you know. It's funny, I think I'll leave now just to check my wife's not having an affair. Yeah, I hope that's dying down. I'm digressing a lot, I shouldn't be good. But I had, you know, once somebody did a seminar, I hope they're not here, and it was after, you know these education board things where you go along and do stuff, like you've got to be visual or something. I never quite. There are different ways that people learn, apparently. And so I should be moving around a lot for spatial awareness and visual, doing things to keep you. And anyway, this person was doing a thing on folliculinum, and we were sitting there and she said, I want you to think about your uterus for 10 minutes. I know you laugh, but it wasn't funny, I tell you. I thought I'd had a prolapse for months after. You know that film, Some Like It Hot? You know, and where he's going, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy. I kept having to do that. So, what I would say about this is, you know, it's, there's still in the profession, I think, a lot of confusion in terms of the students I see, not in the profession, in terms of the students I see. And I think we need to really get a good debate going about how we teach and what we teach. I think the first thing I would say about teaching materia medica, which actually is what I'm up here to talk about, is that it's subservient to the philosophy. Absolutely subservient to the philosophy, hand in hand. And a lot of what I hear, and I don't know if this relates to what you hear at all. I don't actually care. I'm up here talking about what I do. Is a lot of confusion from students about the kind of materia medica they're learning, the kind of philosophy they're getting. And I think that's a shame, because confusion means that somebody's not sure. It's not good energy. It doesn't put someone in a position where they can sit in front of a patient and feel sure about who they are, what they're doing as a homeopath. I did an exercise recently on a postgrad course, which was just getting a role play of somebody to say to a patient, the patient says, what is homeopathy? Man, if you'd heard it, you'd go to the doctor and get antibiotics, even if you didn't have an infection. It's like the stuff. It's like, well, it all started in a man called Samuel Hahnemann, short fella, not a lot of hair, but, you know. We need to get that sense of punch to it so that we talk to people properly about what we do. And I actually wrote stuff down, a sort of, if there's anybody on the board here from the society, it's a kind of little audit, in fact. And this is the kind of things that students were saying. The student says, you know, surely unless you give the constitutional remedy, all you do is suppress the disease and make the patient sicker. Now, I don't want to get into, I haven't got time to get into discussion about suppression or constitutional remedy. I can only say that I think it means that student is only going to learn constitutional remedies. That's what they're geared up to do. That's all they're taught is constitutional remedies. And I don't feel happy with that. It's partially correct. So I teach my first years constitutional remedies and the second years. But there's other stuff going on. For me, materia medica is very much about movement, and I've talked about this before. It's about movement. I love seeing the movement in a case from remedy to remedy. It's kind of sometimes disparagingly called zigzagging, rightly so, if it becomes a rule in itself that you just give remedies willy-nilly. But when a patient moves from place to place, I love it. Natrum mur to aurum, you know, medorinum to thuya. Plotting. The return of old symptoms coming up and getting stuck. Like for me, materia medica is like watching a film. And it's frozen. It's not like a picture or a portrait that's stuck up there. That's not about energy for me. That's a mechanical way of seeing materia medica for me. So it's getting that sense of movement. Very important. And it gets into a sort of biological classification, doesn't it? You know, you have a glass of milk and a student comes and says, oh, quite tubercular then, are you? You know, it's that, you know, you're always calc carb, always will be calc carb. Well, as you know, people, how many of you know your, as I said at the conference, I won't ask you, how many of you know your constitutional remedy? You know, it's amazing, isn't it? And yet we teach it. So it's a partial truth, this teaching materia medica as a constitutional remedy. The other thing, this was a postgrad student said, we need to find the mental and emotional symptoms because they're the cause of disease. Now, I'm not saying anybody here or anybody necessarily in the colleges thinks that or teaches it. It's amazing. It's like a ghost that seems to go around, you know, and says stuff and frightens students, and I can never find out who's doing it. It's like a headless cavalier or something. It's like drug companies employing phantoms, you know, to go around and go, you'll never get it right unless you get the central delusions. And I think that's very disempowering if we teach materia medica from that point of view, because all students learn is then mental and emotional symptoms, and are very frightened to prescribe on physical symptoms, which I think is an awful shame. Awful shame. So I spend half my life fighting that, actually. Although, in fact, do you know what? I'll tell you something that I wouldn't tell my students. I love prescribing on mental and emotional symptoms, and that's what I really look for, if I can find them. And if I can invent them, I'll do that too. I'll make them feel sick, I'll tell you. But I know that next month I'm going to have to do a bit of extra work because they're not going to feel any better, and they probably had a terrible physical aggravation. And it does tend to piss people off if they come in with hay fever and I start talking about, you know, how they weren't suckled at the age of 5 and how that must have felt. And so on. The third student, you know, this, I hope it's coming across clear that this philosophy, what I'm really saying is I'm talking about philosophical misunderstanding, but this is very important for the teaching materia medica, because it means what the student learn is going to be very different. The third one is always my favourite, the one that thinks there is no such thing as philosophy in homeopathy, you know. Hahnemann, you know, he's a boring old file. Kent is just a county in England where they used to grow apples. It's like, you know. It's lovely. I was talking to Bill about it in the pub last night. It's like, you know, all you do is whip out the patient's amalgam fillings, you know, detox the liver, move them away from power lines if they, you know, live near them, and they should feel a lot better. And then there's the French approach, what I call the French approach. This is where patients aren't really patients at all, or human, they're onions. You treat onions. They go on, you take the top layer off. You know, I'm going to strip off the top layer.